Tony D and Little Joan, and this is a video about, well, it's about, I guess, the recent controversy between Yellow Flash and Ethan Van Sciver. So I'm going to talk about comic economics. Now, I'm not in it for the drama farming. I'm really not. I don't do that, but I have some opinions on this, so I'm just going to weigh in from my perspective because I think it's important to clarify and sort of push back a little on Ethan Van Sciver. Now, I'm a fan of Ethan Van Sciver's YouTube and his persona. I haven't read Cyberfrog. I think it's kind of cool, but I haven't read it, so I can't say I'm a real fan of Cyberfrog. But, I like Ethan. He's a South Jersey guy. Represent. But I think there are some points that he makes that are a little emotional and not necessarily the most logical ones. Anyhow, smash like and subscribe. Thank you for that was a wind up. Smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys. I just went to the eye doctor, which is why I'm wearing these. This is my second take. So I was thinking about this all at the eye doctor, and I said, that first take's no good. I got to do another one. So Yellow Flash, apparently, and I don't know all the details of this deal, but the round details are something like this. Yellow Flash hired an artist named Dillard to draw a graphic novel that he wants to publish. Yellow Flash is a YouTuber, and he offered him one of two options. He offered him $20,000 cash. I'm sure it wasn't in a briefcase, but, he offered to pay him $20,000 to draw the comic. I assume that included the entire comic from beginning to end, lettering, everything. Or he could take 40% of the proceeds of the crowdfunding thing, or the sales, which he estimated to be around $400,000 because, he is a YouTuber with a large following. Now, normally when comic book guys, especially publishers, offer you a deal where you should draw a comic for a percentage, you should do one of two things, artist. You should assume the comic isn't going to make any money, because it probably won't. Or you should say, no, get the hell away from me. That's crazy. I'm not working for free. I'm not a slave. And Ethan, as an artist, is coming from a good place. I don't think he's trying to do this maliciously, although I think he's drama farming quite a bit. But, he and I have done comics for a long time, not together, but separately. And I've seen, and I'm sure he has, literally hundreds of guys get ripped off by publishers. And they're usually all of them artists. Handful of them are writers too, but most of them are artists. They don't even give the writers a consideration to even pay them, pretend to pay them and rip them off, by the way. So, yeah, I know a lot of artists who are owed a lot of money from various publishers that just went out of business. Why does that happen? Okay, so let me give you some background on that if you're a noob to the comic book industry and the American comic book system. So typically, if you're selling a comic book in a comic book store, the comic book store pays the distributor for the comic, not you. So they pay about 40 to 60% discount they get. Usually 40. So let's just call it 50. 50% discount, right? So if the comic book in your store is $4.99, they paid about $2.50 for it. The distributor, Diamond, it's called Diamond Distributors. They do previews every month. They do almost all the comics, and to every comic book store. So in order to get them from you, if you're the publisher, you have to sell them to Diamond, right? So Diamond, in order to sell a comic for $2.50, won't purchase it for more than $1.25. They have to double their money, right? So they buy it from you from $1.25, and then they sell it to the store for $2.50. That means your comic at $1.25 per unit has to include the profit of that comic. Half of that is probably going to be your cost. You can't make it more than half, or you're not making enough money. Then you have to raise the cost of the comic. So the cost of your comic for $1.25 has to be under 62.5 cents. Right? Which means, in the world of comics, you gotta usually print a lot of comics. Like when I was printing in Brenner back in the day, and this is the 90s, my per unit cost was about 32 cents for a black and white comic that was 32 pages. Black and white interior, color exteriors. We are talking about comics. First off, the prices are much higher, and now we're talking about comics that are full color graphic novels, 48 pages on beautiful paper. These are much more expensive comics. But in Kickstarter crowdfunding situations, you don't have a distributor or a comic book store. You're selling directly to the fans. So whatever it costs you, you just have to double it. And you have to include the print cost, the talent cost, and the shipping. Maybe the promotional cost too. But in the case of the Flash, he is the promotional cost. He has the subscriber base that if 10% of his following orders his comic, he'll sell 50,000 copies. That's a lot of cash. And if he sells each one of those copies on average, say $20, well, there's your $1 million. That's not that's not a dream. That's a real possibility. Flash has about, I think he has about 450,000 fans, subscribers. It's higher than that. I believe Eric July has about 350, and Ethan has about just under 150. Ethan, when he did Cyberfrog Blood and Honey, raised $500,000. I think this was a recent issue. And that means, on average, his customers paid him about $62 each. That's how you get. Now, some of them paid more and some of them paid less, but on average, it was about $62. And he only needed 8,500 people to buy in to make $500,000. Well, he didn't make $500,000, but you have to figure that if Ethan raised $500,000, his actual profit is probably about $250,000. You might have to minus some taxes on that, so maybe you're talking around 175, something like that. But yeah, he did pretty well for himself. Flash, could do twice that easily. In fact, since he has higher numbers than Eric July, he could do more. Eric July did almost $4 million. If Yellow Flash, if that trend continues, well, then Yellow Flash could easily do over $1 million. That means Dillard, the guy he hired, would get 40% of that. He wouldn't just get $400,000. He'd get, I don't know, if he raises $200 million or $2 million, he'll get $800,000. That's a lot of ka-ching, man. Now, again, normally I wouldn't take a percentage deal, but when you look at the current paradigm of crowdfunding comics and YouTubers getting into comics, that sounds like he's going to make some money. I bet he makes more than $20,000. I would bet that. Maybe this has all gone to hell thanks to the bad publicity, but if Flash doesn't do $1 million, let's say he does $500,000, okay, still makes $200,000. That's better than $20,000. Let's say he only makes $250,000. He'll still make $100,000. That's 5 times what he would have made. Now, should he work for free? No. But positing that question, as you are positing it, oh, artists shouldn't work for free, is the same tactic people use on the left. I know, it hurts. On the left, when they talk about minimum wage. Oh, people at McDonald's, shouldn't they be able to work for a living? We have to raise the minimum wage to $15, $20, $25 an hour. It's the same argument. As long as Dillard went into the discussions of money with eyes open, as long as he understood he wouldn't be paid for 6 months and said to his wife, can we survive 6 months without me being paid? And she said, oh, yeah, sure. Well, then he made a decision. Now, you could argue it's a bad decision. I would argue if he was cutting it close to the bone, at the very least, he should have split the difference, taken half and half. Maybe Flash didn't want to do that. Now, it's possible Flash misled him. If it turns out Yellow Flash misled this artist, led him down the garden path, guaranteed him things he couldn't guarantee, I'll be the first to help you, continue to criticize him. But he is a public figure. I don't think he did that. I think it would hurt his brand very severely. I would be shocked if he did it. It's possible. It's possible he misled Dillard. Now, it's not nice that Dillard's house flooded and then he fell on hard times and he couldn't buy Christmas gifts for his family. You guys at Comicsgate did something nice. You raised money and gave his kids Christmas gifts. But who put them in that position? Yellow Flash didn't put them in that position. Dillard did. Dillard made a decision. He took a big risk. And unfortunately, things didn't pan out the way he wanted. Now there's if I can see the link, I'm half blind here. Now this is some of the numbers from Ethan. By the way, Ethan's book cost about $38,000 to print. Color, chromium covers. That's a high print. I don't have a link anymore. Anyhow, there's a clip of Eric July trying to argue on the Ripperverse podcast, and I'm not slamming Eric July either, that what about Flash getting paid? Flash is operating as the publisher. The publisher pays people. He's like the producer of a comic, and producers pay people. That's their job. They put together the deal. But if Ethan is crowing that Dillard is an equal partner to Yellow Flash, then Dillard has to put up half the money for the printing and the promotion. If there's any other promotion above and beyond Yellow Flash just putting it out there in his podcast, that would be equal. It's unequal. Flash is in charge. He's the writer. He's the publisher. He's putting up the money. Now, you are different from that. You're an auteur. You're the artist. You're the writer. You're the publisher. You're doing it all. You're getting all the money. If you're working for other people, you're at the level where you can't work for free. You don't have time or, the energy or whatever. I don't know what Dillard's status is. Seems like a good artist. Maybe he's just trying to make a name for himself. This could have made his career. Yellow Flash puts out a book. They make $1 million. It's all over the internet. He makes $400,000. It sucks that he got flooded out of his house. It totally sucks. And if I was Yellow Flash, probably the first thing I would have done is maybe call him up and see if we could renegotiate the deal and give him some money so he could get through his terrible time and get the damn book finished. But barring that, I don't know what Flash's deal is. Maybe Flash never had the money to begin with. I don't know. But $20,000 to draw the book, he should have taken that. He absolutely should have taken that cash. If he had a family and he was on the bubble. In other words, it was going to be close, but maybe he'd just eke it out. He's got kids. He can't take those kinds of risks when you have kids. He should have taken that money if he was that close. But if he wasn't that close, if his wife has a job, no, I can carry us for 6 months to a year. It'll be fine. That you just have to look at the numbers of the subscribers to see that, oh, this was an opportunity to make $400K. They could buy a new house with $400K. Forget the flooded house. Get a new house. So, I understand a lot of artists have been ripped off by the whole, oh, just come work for me for exposure, and come work for me, and once the comic's out, then I'll pay you. Yeah, been there, done that. Some guys just don't have any money. But if the artist is told, just as a writer is told, open eyes, man, like, I don't have any money to publish my comics. And I never did. Through my entire run of independent comics, we didn't make much money. But I told every artist I worked with, listen, man, these comics of mine don't make a lot of money. They make very little money. You might get some money. You can come to the con. You'll be able to sell stuff. You'll be able to tell everybody, I'll give you free copies. You'll be able to sign books. It was a side thing, a side hustle for most of these guys. Did I exploit them? No. I told them what it was. I had an artist who was so excited to draw my comic. After 2 issues, he wanted to quit his job. And I had to sit there and tell him, no, you idiot. You can't quit your job. I'm not paying you enough to live. I'm not paying me enough to live. I have a job. You have to keep your job. But artists are, as you know, dreamers. And sometimes they get it into their head, oh, well, I just got to do it and it'll all come together. No, it's very time consuming. And that's the downside for being an artist in the industry. It's very time consuming. They have to spend days doing pages. And I understand that. And I think Flash understands at least most of that. But I've worked with plenty of artists, too, who have oversold themselves. Right? This is from the other side. I've had artists who have said, oh, yeah, I can do a page a day. We'll have this thing ready in a month. Okay, great. And then we sign a deal, start working on the project. Within 2 weeks, it's like, oh, man, I'm sorry, I'm so behind. I went to the movies. My aunt died. My dog got sick. I'm watching TV. And then nothing. And you could say, well, those guys weren't professional. Yeah, they weren't. But you end up working with them, just like you end up working with unprofessional asshats as publishers, too, and writers. Yeah, I know a particular writer who really screwed up a good project. They are rife in the industry. But this drama isn't helping Dillard. Dillard's got $400,000 potentially coming from the Yellow Flash. I think they can make this money because unless the bad press has killed this project, they can make this money because he has that many subscribers. You made $500,000. Only 8,500 people bought the damn comic. Flash, I mean, he can make, let's say $20 a pop. That seems to be the going rate of a graphic novel on the crowdfunding. About $25 a pop, for crowdfunding. Let's say $20. If he sells just as many as you, that's roughly what? See, it would be 17,000 with another zero, $170,000. 40% of that would be 85, 4 times 4, like, that would be about 85 minus 17 is $68,000. Yeah, $68,000, 40% if he sells to the same amount of people you do, just at $20 a pop. So that would be more. He would make $170,000 gross, and then, the percentage of that would be 40%. Now, if it's profit, then no, it's not going to be that high. And I don't know what Flash told him. You don't know the details of this deal either. He might have made it. He might have promised him gross points, which would be, oh crap. But $40,000 or whatever, $68,000 is, or what did I say? Yeah, $68,000. Yeah, that's a lot more than $20,000. That's 3 times what it is. It won't get him in a house, but it might fix his flooded house. And look, not to sound cruel, but Dillard's flooded house is Dillard's own bad luck. It sucks. I mean, I feel for the guy, but that wasn't Yellow Flash's fault at all. He didn't flood the damn house. No one could anticipate a flood. So, this idea, well, he's exploiting artists, and I'm going to champion the artist who's being exploited. Okay, let's say you do that. Let's say, and I've heard you talk about how you should have the money to pay these artists. Okay, if you're paying the Dillard rate, if you're paying that rate, my friend who worked on Batman got $275 a page at DC, doing Batman. And that was just for pencils. But Dillard was getting about $300 a page. If it's a, I think I calculated 64-page graphic novel for $20,000. I think that was about $312 a page. That's a pretty good rate. But that would also mean, unless you got $20,000 to blow on your project and don't want to advertise it at all, go F yourself. You can't work in the comic book industry. That sounds like a bar to entry that we don't necessarily need. And again, I don't see a lot of artists hiring writers, and they damn well should, because most of the artists can't write. I know that sounds shocking, but it's true. There are 2 problems in the comic book industry. Number 1 is the price. The price of buying the damn comic for the fan is astronomical and too high. Most normies aren't going to pay $20 for a comic book. They're just not going to pay it. They're just going to say, "Oh, comic books. How much are these? $20? No, thank you," and they walk away. They don't want $20 comics. $1, $2, maybe if it's a longer comic, $5, maybe even $10 if it's a really big comic, but $20 a comic for a 48-page comic? Look, I just read and reviewed Isom 1, 2, and Alpha Core. It took me about 15 minutes to read each one of them. That's not a lot of entertainment value for $20. It's okay. I mean, I guess these days everything's expensive, but I think you got to cut those numbers down somehow. The other major problem is the writing. The writing is atrocious. It's not just bad on some of them, it's awful on most of them. Most comics are so poorly written, and I'm not just talking about the woke stuff coming out of Marvel and DC. They were terrible, pretty much true during your era. That's not a slam against you, but most of the writers writing superhero stuff are terrible. They're just terrible. And part of it's not their fault. They can only do so much in 22 pages with superheroes who have been around for 50 years and editors who probably are putting constraints on them that really, really hamper their storytelling abilities. But the bottom line is, comic books have been written terribly for years. It's an issue. But I don't see any of these crowd-funded guys hiring writers. I just don't see it. Most of them are writers. Most of the time, when a writer wants to do a comic, the first thing he has to do is get an artist, hire him if he can afford it, and then try to work out a deal. And if you're saying, well, if you don't have $20,000, go pound sand, we're taking over, we're the artist. Okay, good luck with that. You're going to have a lot of pretty comics that make no effing sense. You're going to have a lot, page after page of beautiful art that people go, wow, it's pretty cool, but I don't know. I just buy it for the covers. And that's what I hear a lot at shows. People buy comics for the covers. It's why they seal them in plastic, never to open them again, and get them graded. So they can still look at the covers and they can sell them. So if that's the industry you want, well, you're helping it along. Because once you drive out the writers and say, well, pay us. We're artists and we're great. We demand all sorts of money. Well, you want lots of money? Okay. Have the industry. Take it all. Take it all. See what that gets you. See what that gets you when AI gets a little better. Just a little better. Even before AI, artwork was coming out. Bitchute back in the 90s was talking about taking the character she, rendering her in three dimensions, rendering backgrounds, and then positioning the character, and then doing the word balloons. Eventually, writers will be able to do that. Only they ain't even going to bother with comic books in printed form. They're going to go right to cartoons. They're going to go right to live action. We already have that now. There are guys who put together little movies using Grand Theft Auto and other video games like that. And they rewrite the dialogue, boom, there you go. Are they stealing from the artist when they do that? If they license GTA and to use the imagery? Or if they pay an artist to come in. So imagine this. Imagine a computer program. If you scan in a character, it can render them in three dimensions. Or I hire a guy, hey, just render this character for me, and he does, and I pay him this flat rate. I don't know. I pay him $100. Maybe I pay him $200. Here you go, buddy. And he renders the character, and it's a flat rate, and I never see him again. And then I can move the character and do whatever the F I want. And I never have to bother with him again. That's the future you're heading for without the writers, without working for the writers. Without the respect of the writers will eventually have the technology to push most of the artists out of it. Or at least to the point where you're going to still be in the same position. And then you'll be crowing about that. Oh, if you're rendering my guy and blah, blah, blah. But again, if I paid you $200 for a little bit of work, do I owe you that money if you knew what you were getting into? I didn't pressure you to do it. I just said, would you draw me this character for $200? I'll even tell you, I'm going to render it in AI, and then I'm going to position it, and I'm going to make a bunch of comics with it. You could say no to my $200, but I don't have more than $200. So what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? If we can't have artists and writers collaborate, not just creatively, but financially too, what am I supposed to do? Oh, I guess I'm going to go write books. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. And when the books are successful enough, hey, you want me to write a comic? Well, pay up. Pay up. Pay me my $20,000 to write your comic. Oh, I can't pay that kind of money. That's outrageous. I created the character. Oh, okay. Well, what do you think happens when the TV guys and the movie guys come a calling? The first thing they do is they're going to buy the character out and they're going to write it. Because most of these guys, they have ideas. The first time they took Spawn and turned it into a cartoon, I knew immediately it would be 100% better. Because the TV guys would format it in a way that the story would make more sense. It wouldn't just be a bunch of ideas that went in random directions, which is what I think Spawn was for a long time. Instead, it was a coherent narrative that went from beginning to end, that was driven by the formatting of television. And guys who wrote for TV who kind of knew what they were doing. It was a pretty decent series, the Spawn cartoon, I would say. But they're not going to need the artist for that. They would need the writer, though. They would need him. So the two major things I think are plaguing this industry are the price for the fan and the writers. This is a distraction about the money. If you want the money situation to be good for every artist, you can't just say you got to pay artists. People can't afford $20,000 to do one comic, even a graphic novel, unless they're in Flash's position where he can pretty much bank on 10 to 40,000 people buying the damn thing. Although maybe not now. Most people can't bank on that. You know, could he have paid him $20,000? Yeah, he offered it to him. He could have taken it. He's a big boy. Dillard, I assume. He's got 2 kids and a wife. So, I don't have anything against Dillard. I don't have anything against Yellow Flash or you or Eric July or anybody in the comic book industry. I'm just saying, if you want this, you have to settle the economics of it. You have to say, look, if you're going to do a comic, here's the money. Here's the money. And if you could pay a guy a normal rate, then you're at this level. If you can't pay him that rate, well, then nobody should be getting any rate. If the writer's living off the comic and the artist isn't, well, that's an issue. That's maybe an issue. If they're 50-50 collaboration. I'll tell you what I do right now as a writer who worked in comics for many years if I had the money. I would pay artists to draw, and I would pay them a decent rate. I don't know how livable it would be, but I would pay them a decent rate. I think I'd be clocking in somewhere about $100 a page, maybe. 100 to $200 for like a monthly book. But I wouldn't commit to any single artist because I know the flakiness of a lot of artists. I would want several different artists in the queue. I would have them writing or drawing different issues. I would never let the fans get used to one particular style because I wouldn't want to be beholden to one particular artist. I would pay them a flat rate and never any percentage of royalty. Maybe a small one just to give them slight incentive, but no. I've worked with too many unreliable flakes in this industry. And yeah, I couldn't pay him. I couldn't pay him a good rate. And you could say you get what you pay for. That is true. That is very true. If I could pay a professional, I would expect it delivered on time, professional, and amazing. And maybe it would be. Or maybe it's not, because I've heard stories of guys getting good rates and blowing the deadlines badly. It's not always on the publisher. It's not always on the artist. It's not always on the writer. It's not always on it. Each individual case is different. You're biased for the artist. You could say I'm biased for the writer. I certainly am, and maybe the publisher too, because I've been that too. I don't think, this situation is as bad as you think it is. If Yellow Flash gets this comic out, I think Dillard will make a good bit of cash. I think what little evidence I've seen, Yellow Flash seems like an honest actor. He may be a little uninformed about what he should have said in the deal, but are business people, I mean, you're a conservative, I assume you're a capitalist. Are business people supposed to pay their employees extra out the gate when they don't know them? Or are they supposed to pay them at a rate that's profitable? Yellow Flash offered him a good rate, and he ended up with a percentage which maybe in the end less profitable to him, but it's less risk, and that's what capitalists do. Is it wrong? Well, it wasn't Flash's fault. His house flooded, and that he ran out of money to take care of his kids. That is not on him. It's not on Dillard either, but maybe it is. I don't know what Dillard's numbers are. I think unless you want to create sort of a Bill of Rights for comic artists and comic creators, and include the writers in that too, and include the promoters, and include the publishers, because they are part of the system too. Otherwise, you're just going to have a bunch of really talented artistic auteurs drawing a bunch of crazy nonsense, most of which won't be readable, and most of it won't go anywhere. It'll make cool tattoos and murals and stuff, but you know, it's not going to transcend the medium, in my view. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents. I'm Tony D. This is Little Joan. We'll see you in the next one.